Shalom. Hello again. I'm Michael McHugh. Welcome to my third installment on the pronunciation of the Creator's name. In the first presentation, we looked at the biblical data. We saw why the form of the verb havav, hey, in Ecclesiastes 11:3, compared with the pronunciation of the name at the end of the proper name Micaiah, reveals the true pronunciation of the Creator's name, and why the pointing Yehovah in the Hebrew text does not. In the second installment, we looked at the conjunction and inseparable prepositions affixed to the pointing Yehovah in the Tanakh and discovered more information discouraging the use of Yehovah as the authentic pronunciation. In this third installment, we're going to look at other pronunciations of the name in use today. Yehovah. To sum up, the biblical data reveals it to be something other than the true pronunciation of the Creator's name. So, what do we say about the pronunciation Yahuwah? Well, it's based on how the name looks at the end of men's proper names, which is Yahu, as in Eliyahu, Elijah. Add an ah to Yahu and you have Yahuwah. But this pronunciation does not take into consideration how the name looks at the beginning and middle of men's proper names, which is Yeho, as in Yehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat, Elyehoenai, Elyoenai. Add an ah to Yeho and you come up with Yehovah. It also does not take into consideration how the name looks at the end of the name Micaiah 21 out of 23 times, which is Yehu. So, the pronunciation Yahuwah is based on an incomplete evaluation of the data. It's based on a partial equation and on the unwarranted assumption that the name ends with an ah sound. And so most importantly, and not surprisingly, Yahuwah does not communicate he will be. As we saw in the first presentation, he will be is communicated by Yehu. This form of the verb havav, hey, is found in Ecclesiastes 11:3 and reflects precisely the pronunciation of the name at the end of Micaiah's name. When you know the real thing, it's easy to spot an impostor. I have saved for last that which appears to be the most prevalent understanding of how to pronounce the name, Yahweh. This pronunciation is based on Greek and Latin manuscript evidence. It is also based on something Josephus said concerning the head covering of the high priest. Here's what he writes. A mitre also of fine linen encompassed his head, which was tied by a blue ribbon, about which there was another golden crown, in which was engraven the sacred name. It consists of 4 vowels. Now this was originally penned by Josephus in Hebrew and translated into Greek. Here it is in his own words. I have proposed to myself, for the sake of such as live under the government of the Romans, to translate those books into the Greek tongue, which I formerly composed in the language of our country. I spent a good deal of time in the first presentation demonstrating how Hebrew was the language of Israel in the time of Josephus, and how it remained a living language well into at least the 4th century of the Common Era. What's left of the Jewish war today is an English translation of a Greek translation of a Hebrew original, which we do not have. So this statement that the sacred name consists of 4 vowels is a translation which is problematic on several fronts. First of all, Hebrew doesn't have vowels. Hebrew has vowel letters. That is, letters that can double as vowels. There are 3. Hey can be ah like the A in father. Vav can be O like the O in no, or U like the U in flute. Yud can be E like the I in machine, or A like the EI in 8. So, taking the Josephus pronouncement at face value, that the sacred name consists of 4 vowels, The proponents of the Yahweh pronunciation say this: the Yud is pronounced E, the first He is pronounced A, the Vav is pronounced U, and the final He is pronounced A. Put them all together, and you have I-A-U-A, I-A-U-A, Yahweh. But here's the problem with that. First of all, as was just said, Hebrew does not have vowels, strictly speaking. Hebrew is a language of consonants, some of which can double as vowels. And when they do, they're always preceded by a consonant. Always. With the one exception of the prefix u, and. For this reason, the four vowels cannot possibly be four vowels. Secondly, because Hebrew does not have vowels, per se, there's no such thing as a Hebrew verb comprised of only vowels. For this reason, the four vowels cannot be four vowels. Thirdly, it's the prescribed modification of letters and vowels which colors the verbal root with the various shades of meaning necessary for communication. For this reason, the four vowels cannot be four vowels. Let us now proceed to a grammatical evaluation of the word Yahweh. It is from the root He-Vav He. The definition of that root, as you probably already know, is to breathe, hence to live, and in the use of the language to be, I cue the common word Hayah. The letter vowel pattern of Yahweh identifies it as a hifil, or causative verbal form, imperfect or future tense, third person masculine singular, or he. Put those together, Yahweh means he will cause to be, he causes to be. The problem with that is that the verb He-Vav He has not developed forms in the hifil conjugation, which means quite simply that Yahweh has no meaning in Hebrew. As a hifil verbal form, or a Hebrew word made up of all vowels, Yahweh is a phantom. So we should be asking ourselves at this point, just what is behind this word Yahweh? Well, from what I can tell, behind the word Yahweh is the word Yahweh. Does that sound like a riddle? I-O-V-E. We're familiar with it as Jove. Jove is the ablative form of the name of Jupiter, head of the Roman pantheon. Like most Latin words, it comes into English and other languages mainly through the ablative case. It is interesting to note that Latin once did not contain the letter J, and thus the name was spelled I-O-V-E. Also, the Latin letter V was once used interchangeably with the letter U, and was pronounced as such, sounding like the English letter W. Thus, Jove was pronounced more like Yahweh. W. Sidney Allen, the recognized authority on the pronunciation of classical Latin, gives it to us this way. I is the Y in yes. O is the O in the English pronunciation of pot. V is a W. E is not silent, but is the E in pet. Put them all together, and we hear, in essence, Yahweh with something akin to a British accent. So just who is this Jupiter, this Yahweh, head of the Roman pantheon? I think the answer will disturb you. It disturbed me. From the Handbook to Life in Ancient Rome by Leslie Adkins and Roy A. Adkins comes this statement. Jupiter Dolicenus was originally a Syrian sky and weather god, a Baal, who seems to have been a fusion of Jupiter and the local weather god at Dolice in Turkey. The cult of Jupiter Dolicenus spread throughout the empire. And this. Jupiter is also sometimes portrayed with a spoked wheel, which is a symbol of the Celtic sun god. And from The Religions of the Roman Empire by John Ferguson, we read this. Under the Republic, The government had introduced Eastern cults to keep the people quiet, but the worship of Mithras and Jupiter Dolichaeus spread spontaneously, and both were associated with the sun. And this from an article by Charles Sanders, published in the Journal of the American Oriental Society. For a thorough understanding of Jupiter Dolichaeus and his worship, two things would be necessary. The first of these is a satisfactory knowledge of the old Baal cults, or worship of Syria, for without doubt, the cult of Jupiter Dolichaeus in its original form was simply the worship of the local Baal. Again, on the Roman side, the cults of the purely Roman worship of Jupiter, Jupiter Stator, Jupiter Depulsor, etc., would need to be better understood. The relation of these to the national worship has not yet been adequately investigated. If this relation could be made clear to us, we should very likely see how easy it was for the Romans to adopt the Dolichaeus cult, its worshippers among the Romans conceiving of it as merely a new manifestation of their national worship. Yahweh. It's not a Hebrew word. It's a Latin word for the local Baal. My friends, we have got to eradicate all traces of Baal from the house of Israel, including this tainted pronunciation. When you know the truth, an impostor is easy to spot. Yahweh, insidious. When you know the truth, a counterfeit is easy to spot. Yahuwah, imaginative. When you know the truth, a fraud is easy to spot. Jehovah, ignorant. The sound of breathing. Yeda mishmi.